Good day. We are still in Black History Month. And when I speak about credit unions today, I speak it in the context of Black History Month. Because it was a young men's sodality of Holy Trinity Cathedral that put together the credit union movement in Jamaica. And what was happening in 1941 was that it was very difficult for a black man to enter a bank in Jamaica. And the poor peasants at the time had to rely on the loan sharks who wanted 75% interest. And if they did not pay, they came for their small holdings and their belongings. It was a very difficult situation. Jamaica was in the middle of the whole nationalist thrust that began in the mid-30s, where people were fighting for self-government and for the right to vote. And that nationalistic thrust went on basically until the 1950s. Out of that nationalistic thrust came the National Reform Association, came the Jamaica Welfare Movement. Out of that came the cooperatives in the rural areas, and also the political parties, the trade unions, the early trade unions, and of course, movements like the Council for Voluntary Social Services that came about in 1942. Now, the Young Men's Sodality was part of the Catholic action of the Roman Catholic Church, and they would be part of the youth branch of Catholic action. It was Father Daniel Lord who was singing, and at those times the young people who had been there 80s, 90s, and even 100 now, if they're alive, would be singing, "An army of youth flying the standards of truth. We're fighting for Christ the Lord. Heads lifted high, Catholic action our cry, and the cross our only sword on earth's battlefield." Da 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 da, and so on. And they were fighting for Christ the Lord. It was a whole laity action that was being developed in the church that came together in the Second Vatican Council of the 60s. But at that time, they were really and truly moving. While at the same time in Jamaica, now we had the nationalism, and they were singing, "We are out to build a new Jamaica, we are out to build a new Jamaica." So the two forces came together. And the Young Men's Sodality formed a credit union with 14 people. Everybody threw threepence, 3 cents at conversion, 3 and 6, or 35 cents at conversion. And this was the money base, or the capital base of the credit union. Now, at the same time, the Kingston Clerks also formed their own credit union. And they were actually registered before Sodality, because one member of Sodality was too young to be registered under the old Industrial and Provident Societies Act. And that one person was G. Arthur Brown. He later became governor of Jamaica. Now, so they were registered after. The clerks were registered in December 1941, and Sodality registered in 1942. But the Sodality also formed the Credit Union League. And the first achievement of the credit union movement was to the demolition, not the demolition, but the stopping of the loan sharks. They demolished the loan shark industry in Jamaica. That's probably the correct word. They demolished the loan shark industry, while the small people now could borrow among themselves. But the important thing was that in the early days of credit unions, you had to be trained for 6 months before you could join. And you were taught how the credit union worked, and that the credit union movement is a democratic movement, and that the annual general meeting is the highest authority in any cooperative, which includes the credit unions. So, in the early days, there was training. And of course, by 1950, the Cooperative Act of Jamaica came into being, that all cooperatives the service co-ops, the producers co-ops, and the credit unions would be under the Cooperative Act of Jamaica. So there was a marriage of sorts. But there was a human marriage 2 years before that between a young miss who worked with Jamaica Welfare and a young man who was teaching credit union principles. And those were my parents, Keith Constantine Burke and Shirley Maynier, who married Keith Constantine Burke. So that was the whole story behind that. What has happened in recent times why credit unions are no longer empowering people? The main thing is the education was stopped. Apparently people with a certain type of interest got into the movement and got themselves elected. And because the members do not know their rights, they don't come to meetings, and therefore they provide their own quorum and they get themselves elected over and over again. And make sure that, that they can benefit in certain ways. That like when they're having meetings and so on, and all the pleasurable things that goes with meetings in the hotels and so on. So instead of looking about empowering people, what needs to be done in the credit union movement is that we need to have an organization of people who join the credit unions and join the cooperatives, who form a cooperative or a friendly society that is about providing jobs. And what you do is that you go to each credit union meeting and vote. Vote on the surplus, that you get some of the money so that you can buy, and that money would go to that one cooperative that would buy shares on the stock market substantial enough that you could provide jobs. Would buy shares on the stock market and even own a hotel or own a business. Not so much for profit, but to provide jobs. The earliest motto of the credit union movement was not for profit, not for charity, but for service. We need to have a movement to do this. We need to have a movement in this country that will empower the poor people. And once the poor people are empowered, I think the big businesses should support such a cooperative, because if these people are employed, then they can buy their goods and services. If they are not employed, they cannot buy them. So it is in everybody's interest that everybody has some amount of employment. There are some business people who understand that. There are others who apparently do not understand that. But I have about 1 or 2 questions. If I were to start a course in credit unions and teach the course, would you come to that? Because it's quite clear that the Credit Union League is no longer going to do that. The Credit Union League set up their own classes, and they even built a place called Sullivan Hall at their office. But no such classes are taking place. And it is just talk and talk and talk. I am prepared to teach a course in cooperatives, but people would have to come. And of course, we talk about online this and online that. Well, maybe that can work too. But I'm old-fashioned. I need something face-to-face in addition to anything that is online. So, how did I do for a commentary where I forgot my script and spoke extemporaneously? Have a good day.